thousands of homes were destroyed. There were more than about 1,400 people who died. 15,000 people, mostly African American, lost their homes. They were displaced. Many of those people never came back. And that community is still trying to bring new business, attract new homeowners back into New Orleans. We've got AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Porter now joining us with more on what we know now in hindsight about what caused this massive disaster and what's been done since. Jonathan.
Good morning. Good to be with you on this somber occasion.
Thanks for being here. So, first of all, share with us your personal experience during Katrina.
Well, I was very early on in my AccuWeather career. I had been here for about a year at the time that Katrina struck, and I remember working in the days before the storm, working with our team members here, some of whom have 40, 45 years of experience in forecasting and communicating the weather. And we were so concerned. I remember as I was working a 3 a.m. Broadcast shift prior to Katrina's landfall, a couple of days before the storm made landfall. And I remember us being so concerned about the impacts in New Orleans. We issued one of the strongest worded forecasts ever from AccuWeather that 50 to 75% of the city of New Orleans would be underwater. We were the only ones that were saying that, and it caused lots of entities to other media were criticizing us. How could we say that? But we explained why we were so concerned with such an intense storm, and we knew there would be so much pressure on the levees. We know that forecast saved thousands of lives in the New Orleans area. But of course, if local officials had taken that forecast and used it even more effectively, we know many more lives could have been saved. And that's the tragedy of that particular situation. But as you mentioned, it was an extremely intense storm that showed the true power of hurricanes, both in terms of the storm surge in Mississippi and all that flooding in New Orleans and the inland winds that went all the way, hurricane force winds well inland into Mississippi, a true tragedy.
Jonathan, I'm so glad that you reminded us of that and of your forecast, because we were just talking in the last hour about the importance of journalism during that storm, that journalists were sounding the alarm. And I put you as a meteorologist, obviously, into that category, not only sounding the alarm after it happened, which I remember Shepard Smith, Anderson Cooper on the ground, but you're saying beforehand, you were trying to sound the alarm and people just couldn't believe, I guess, the level of devastation. So what's changed since then? I mean, has New Orleans shored up the levees? Could this happen again?
Well, that's right, Allison, and that's a great point that journalists played such an important role in highlighting that tragedy. And of course, we in advance had highlighted those dangerous risks and saved so many lives with that forecast. I think the issue there was that it was the slowness of the local officials in order to take action based upon that forecast. They had not seen flooding like that before. We used every word we could to best describe it. We know we did everything we could to get that message out. In the years since, I think there's been more of a focus on what we've always been highlighting here at AccuWeather, which is the power of water, whether that's the storm surge or whether that's inland flooding, or in this case, the risk for a storm surge to put so much pressure on those levees that they broke and caused so much catastrophic flooding. So there's been more focus on that in the years since, but I'll highlight once again, it is incumbent, a forecast or a warning is only as good as the action that it inspires. And if you take a look at what happened in the Texas Hill Country just a few weeks ago, where there were advance warnings from the government and from AccuWeather, AccuWeather issued a flash flood warning near Hunt, Texas, 30 minutes in advance of the government and other sources, which had provided more than several hours of advance notice before the peak of the flooding. There were more actions that could have been taken by local officials and the people responsible at the camps. So it shows you that how important it is for that connection between the superior forecast and messaging and actions on the ground to save lives.
And in those 20 years since, how are we seeing the impacts of climate change continue to speed up and worsen in the region?
Yeah, we're seeing many impacts from climate change in a lot of different ways. Obviously, increased frequency of extreme weather events, increased magnitude of severe weather events. As it relates to hurricanes, warmer water on average across the world has resulted in an increased risk for storms to rapidly intensify, especially in the Gulf. And when that happens, the storm surge impacts, the wind impacts, and the rain impacts can be more substantial. So it increases the risk for even higher level impacts that can threaten lives even more. So that's why we advise everyone to stay tuned to the AccuWeather forecast very frequently. Remember, we're haven't even reached the peak of hurricane season. That statistically is on September 11th, and we think that there's going to be a very active back end of the hurricane season. So lots of time to pay close attention to the AccuWeather forecast here over the coming weeks and months.
And we should point out that radar image beside you is historical. That's not current.
That's correct. That is the
Yeah.
radar review of